Hi everyone, and welcome to this special edition of Low Season Traveller Insider Guides. I'm your host, Jed Brown, founder of Low Season Traveller, and this episode was taken from the 10th session of the Keeping the Dream Alive series of webinars, which we're collaborating on with the World Tourism Association for Culture and Heritage. This episode is entitled Crisis and Careers, Navigating the Storm, and we've got the perfect person to help us sail a straight course. Karen Priest is the principal of Smart Tourism, a boutique marketing consultancy which provides strategic solutions and advice to the tourism industry. Also, she is the co-director of Tourism Talent Australia, a tourism recruitment and development consultancy originally launched by fellow tourism talent directors in New Zealand. Karen has over 30 years' experience in tourism and hospitality, having held several diverse senior management roles in marketing, business development and communications in Western Australia, New Zealand, South Africa and the United Kingdom. She's gained significant experience working for various regional, state and national destination marketing agencies, including Tourism Australia, Tourism Western Australia, New Caledonia Tourism, Australia's Southwest and Mundara, and Peel Tourism Organisation. She's also worked in private enterprise in hotel management roles, the wine industry and the caravan and camping sector. She's previously served on various boards and committees, including the Perth Convention Bureau, the Western Australia branch of the Australian Tourism Export Council, and the Fremantle Chamber of Commerce. She previously sat on the Marketing Advisory Panel for Tourism Western Australia and has served as a board director on the Tourism Council Western Australia's peak tourism industry body, for 4 years. She has an extensive network of contacts within tourism, media and the public and private sectors in Australia and overseas. She's also passionate about tourism development and marketing and is highly regarded by the industry as an expert and leader in her field. Karen feels privileged to currently serve as a commissioner on the Board of Tourism for Western Australia. This episode is entitled Crisis and Careers, Navigating the Storm, and this is the Q&A session which follows the keynote.
So Jed, I'm happy to take questions if time now permits.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Karen. Really great presentation and some great insights there. I just love the title of that book, Fat 40 and Fired. I think there should be one for Fat 50 and Fired as well, however. But anyway.
Jed, I'm thinking of writing that one.
No, I might be you too. You never know.
Yeah, but Nigel, he's a really great guy, and I know that's a serious subject, so I'm not trying to make it lighthearted. But I think in these times, it just helps us sort of reevaluate things. And, touch wood, we've still got our health and well-being. And if you've got that, then you've got the wherewithal to find and put some energy, I guess, into decisive action is what I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely right. So if the audience could start putting through their questions, and I'm sure we'll have lots of questions for you, Karen. Just in the meantime, some of the thoughts which sort of jumped out to me, you talked at the outset of, there's some pretty scary figures out there at the beginning. One of them, 100 million jobs lost worldwide and 63 million job losses in Asia Pacific. And I was just making notes at the time. We always hear that we shouldn't take redundancies personally, and that it's the role, as you mentioned, it's the role that's being made redundant, not the person. But of course, I was the person doing that job, so it affects me personally. But how do recruiters, how do they view people who have been made redundant? I think sometimes people seem to think that maybe there is a stigma attached if you've been made redundant. Is it okay to be upfront about the fact that you've been made redundant, and how do recruiters view that?
Look, in my opinion, as a recruiter myself, and this just works for me, there might be other recruiters on the line or out there who do things differently, but I always believe about transparency and honesty. And of course, if your job is on your resume, with your permission, we're going to do reference checks anyway. So what I do myself on my own resume, and you heard me say earlier, unfortunately, when I first came back to Western Australia, I had a succession of redundancies where I looked up to the sky and thought, what have I done wrong? And so to be clear, what I do on my own resume, I actually have a section at the end of each job that says reason for leaving. And I just typed in there, position made redundant due to company relocating to Sydney or something like that, whatever is appropriate for that particular job. And especially if you've only had a short window at that job, it shows that there is a reason you left and you were not there for a longer period of time. So that's certainly helped me. And I've been quite upfront about it, and touch wood, that hadn't impacted on any role I went for, because, most times it's about the restructure of a business and companies being more, looking at their costs and looking at how they can cut back on overheads and so on, especially in these times.
I think you gave some great advice as well. I think for people who maybe have found themselves either furloughed or made redundant. And I was reflecting on this myself. So, like yourself, Karen, I've been made redundant a couple of times in my career, and I've also been in the position where I've had to let people go and make
Yes,
people redundant. And I'm sure there's people on the call today that have been through both. For me, the most traumatic actually was letting people go. When I've done that, I've always reflected that actually I would rather be let go than have to let people go. I found that emotionally absolutely, devastating. Is that your experience as well? Do you find that's the bigger risk or threat is people really falling apart emotionally when they're having to be the one making people redundant?
Jed, I'll give you an example of my own experience too, and I couldn't agree with you more. And I had a terrible experience. In fact, I consider it to be what I called, not say life-changing, but it certainly was character building, if you like. So I worked for an organisation, one of the redundancies I mentioned earlier, where they made the whole team redundant. There was about 35 staff. They made the whole team redundant because they were relocating to Sydney. And there was a couple of us that were offered the opportunity to go to Sydney, but most of us declined. However, they gave us a 6-month notice period. So my particular team, I was the National Sales and Marketing Director, so my team of 12 people had to still work for 6 months, knowing that they did not have a job at the end of it. Wow. We put all the right things in place, counselling and everything else. But I remember one day going into the counsellor, and she said, "Oh, you hear about the team?" And I said, No, I'm here about myself, because to your point, I actually found that absolutely destroying. I had 53-year-old men coming into my office in tears because they've just built a new house and they had 5 kids, etc., etc. And so I found it absolutely heartbreaking. However, if I use that example, there is always, I like to be positive and think there is a silver lining. And all of those people that I mentioned, the team of 12, are all in contact with me now. And guess what? They've gone on to bigger and better things, or they've opened a new business. And so even though at the time they couldn't see it, it enabled them to move to something else. But it is very stressful.
It's that thing about, I suppose, and it was mentioned by, I think it was actually Tammy last week, that was Tammy Marshall that was talking about this as well, about, the most important thing is handling these redundancies with compassion and humanity. And if handled in the right way, then, you can still retain that relationship. And, who knows, that might be a strong relationship which you'll have in the future.
Yeah, and it's all about that, Jed. And I saw a terrible thing during COVID. I saw something that had crossed somebody's desk that basically said in writing to the person, if you get offered another job, then I suggest you take it. And I would suggest to you that's a terrible way, obviously, to communicate with your people. So I think it's about engagement. It's about sitting on a one-to-one. And if the people obviously want support with them, you have to let them know that, you're having a meeting with them and you need to have an important discussion, and they're welcome to bring a support person with them. And you have to be empathetic and compassionate. And of course, in those meetings, and you've been there and I have, and I'm sure many others on the call have too, you never know how the individuals are going to react. There might be grief, there might be anger, and we have to be able to, show compassion in those times and try to be empathetic. So that's really important.
So another thing which kind of struck me, we're saying that the estimates are that there's 100 million jobs that have been lost, 65 million in Asia Pacific. Does that mean that as an industry now, to function onto the pre-COVID levels, if we're assuming that that's the aim, that we need to recruit up to 100 million workers for the travel and tourism industry over the coming months to get back up to full swing?
Well, it would sort of seem like that, wouldn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, also that, there may be people right now who, because of the need to survive, they have to actually stop their position in tourism career and move to something else. And I've seen people do that, as I've mentioned already, where chefs and others, because there is no work currently, they've had to then move into areas like aged care. And I'll just pick up on chefs, if I may, because certainly in Australia and New Zealand, that is an area where we actually need more chefs, and we sometimes have a shortage. We've got roles for chefs, but not enough people to fill them. And that's where, of course, I think as part of development, it's also about the younger people. Our education sectors and our training needs to also try to encourage people into our sector. And I think, Jed, to see the tourism industry as what I call a serious industry, so no matter where you are, I think we see a lot of people as young people, they might be studying let's say they might be studying for a law degree or an engineering degree or something like that, and they may get a part-time job as a barista, for example, and think, well, tourism's going to help me whilst I'm studying for my bigger degree. However, what I'd love to see, and maybe this gives us the opportunity as a sector, is to develop the younger people coming through and look at, trying to educate people that tourism has got some amazing opportunities across all different elements of the sector, whether that be aviation, hospitality, tourism, travel. There's a whole range of different career paths that people can take. So I think it's twofold. It's the recruitment side, but it's also getting into educate the younger people that will be our future, that tourism is a fantastic industry. I know it's been fantastic to me, and I'm sure many of the other people on the call would agree with that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's been a great industry to me as well, and to a lot of my friends. You also talked about the gig economy and the growth of the gig economy in recent years. Great, interesting stat there in the UK. 1 in 10 workers in the UK is currently in the gig economy. I hadn't realised how big it was getting. Do you foresee a time when the majority of workers in the tourism industry will be effectively self-employed in the gig economy?
Look, I don't have a crystal ball, Jed. I wish I did. But certainly, I'd be a rich lady. But anyway, it's certainly something that I think we have seen more and more of. And even if I look locally in my own regions or regions that I work with across Australia and New Zealand, we've certainly seen, even pre-COVID, people like myself and others saying, you know what, I want to work for myself. And as a result of that, a lot of businesses have come through saying, I've got a project here. It might be only a number of hours, or I need help doing a new strategy or development and so on. So if I look at myself and other consultants I know as example, many of them are now, they've given up their full-time job as a CEO or a general manager and the like, and they're actually just now working as consultants for a range of different people, whether that's government or private sector. So I do think we're going to see more of it. And I think if our industry embraces it, it's a great opportunity for businesses to actually keep their overheads low, as I said earlier, but also have access to people in our industry with great skills and initiatives. So I think that's a great advantage of the gig economy.
It seems to work really well for everybody, because obviously, like you said, it's a great way for organizations to get to get really experienced people without the commitment of the colossal salary, but also for the individuals. You're part of the gig economy, I'm part of the gig economy, and it works really well for us because we get to be our own boss, we get to set our own times. You work, as you pointed out, you work outrageously hard. But then, for many people, and I'm sure it's many people the way on the call as well, I've worked for large organizations all my life, and I've always worked pretty much 24/7. And I always used to think, God, I couldn't imagine working any harder if I was working for myself. When people would say, hey, you should work for yourself, but it's really hard work. It's like, well, I'm working flat out anyway for these companies. I may as well do it for myself, right?
Jed, I couldn't agree more. And I say the same thing. And, as I alluded to earlier, it's also helped me learn new skills, which is fantastic because, often I look around and think, oh, where's my digital marketing team, or where's my, HR team? And I go, oh, it's me. I've got to do it all, But I think that's made me take on new skills that then have been more attractive as well to other companies who have hired me to do work. And I also think what I enjoy about it, Jed, is every project is different. So, I've got the recruitment sort of area that I'm working with as a director with tourism talent. I'm working with some local government business at the moment. I also have some private sector. I have somebody who approached me and said, look, you've been in the industry a long time. Have you ever considered training? So that's now become part of what I'm doing, is doing more training to young people coming through the sector. And so I think that everything, you can pick it, I'm not say pick and choose, we're not always in that situation right now, but up to that time, I think that it's quite interesting because projects all vary, and you can kind of decide, you might take a project for 3 months and they may extend that. So it may lead to longer work for you as an individual anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just laughing to myself because I was making a note when you were talking in the presentation about, you need to list out the skills that you've acquired as you go through your journey. And certainly for me, you were saying there, you are your marketing manager and everything else. I'm a web developer, social media manager, marketing manager, head of content, podcaster, YouTuber, webinar host, copywriter, and an accountant as well. None of which I'm trained for. But I've had to learn it, and you're right. The amount that I've learned has been absolutely colossal, but it's a steep learning curve.
Yeah, no, look, it is, Jed, and I couldn't agree more. And I think what I love, that's why I wanted to show the books at the end. The book by Richard Boller's, What Color Is Your Parachute? Honest to goodness, if anybody does one thing, just get that book from Amazon or wherever. It's a great book. I should be on commission from Richard because I'm always talking about his book wherever I go. And basically, in that book, it says to you, list your skills as verbs. So really break it down. Don't just say I was a marketer, really break down what those skills are, and you might surprise yourself in terms of how many different things you could adapt to.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, I'm going to bring in Carolyn at this point, and we'll start taking the questions from our audience. Carolyn, are you there?
I am indeed, Jed.
Hey, there you
are. I'm extremely relieved because 2 minutes ago I was breaking absolutely every one of Karen's rules. There was a cat sat on my shoulder. So this definitely, folks, this is a do as Karen says, not as Carolyn does. We do have some very interesting questions coming through now. One from Sean, talking less about the downturn and more about the fact that with automation and all the changes, a lot of jobs are becoming redundant. So Sean's in India. He's saying over 80% of the businesses are affected, with 40% facing complete shutdown, and will 25% of countries there. So greater adoption of technology, making more people redundant. So in honesty, are there actually jobs for the taking, or is the way out to create a job by setting up a new business?
Great question, Sean. Thank you for that. Look, it is a tough time, and let's make no bones about that, because the other thing is, even the vacancies that I alluded to earlier online, let's remember now that there are so many more people looking for jobs. So therefore that makes it, twice as hard, because there's more people competing for the same vacancies, okay? So I think that if you've got the opportunity to actually consider it, creating something for yourself as your own business, that is the best way, that is a really good way forward, because I think that you might be applying for roles, but in terms of if you've got a skill or something that might be required right now, that might be digital marketing or something like that you can do, well, why not try to be part of the gig economy doing that? If you're a person that writes marketing plans, there's plenty of online platforms where you can put your services up, etc. So if you've got the ability to create your own business, I think that would be the way to go forward. I do think also it's quite frightening when you first do that and you think, where's the work going to come from? But I think also it's about reaching out to those contacts that you know. And I've seen all sorts of innovation in recent times, people sort of doing jobs or, just coming up with new ideas where they can help people who perhaps don't have the time or the skill set to do it. So that would be my advice on that one. Thanks, Sean.
Fantastic. Now, there's three sort of questions, and I think this links to something that we heard this morning, which was, are we going to see the rise of a lockdown generation? And the fact that, although technically we're all in this together, some of us are more deeply in the do-do part of together than others. Yeah. So questions both from Tony and from Berendian, both about students. So Berendian, from the student's point of view, practical advice to students who are faced with looking for a job in 2021 after graduation, considering there are no jobs and lots of experienced people wanting to be rehired. Now, Berendian's based in South Africa, and a question there about particular relevance there. But Tony, who is, I believe, in the UK, saying, Is it something where businesses could come in, given the number of students, what suggests that they, given the reduction in travel budgets to secure a job, would you suggest that they work without pay for 3 to 6 months? Don't you think employers should use this period to bring students into their business at no initial financial risk and take advantage of their skill set? So I think two perspectives on the same kind of issue. Thoughts for both of those audiences, Karen?
Brilliant. Thanks, Carolyn, and thanks. I'll take them one at a time. So thanks, Burendian. My home country is South Africa, so best wishes to you there. I lived in South Africa for quite some time, and I have actually got quite a lot of contacts there in the tourism industry as well. So if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to perhaps help you in that space. I'll come to you, Tony, in a minute. So when we talk about students and look, I think that there is, there's a number of different things you can do. I always say, don't wait for vacancies to be advertised. And I've said that throughout the career, just even before when I was back in recruitment, think about companies that might be hiring right now, approach them, don't wait for vacancies to be advertised. So, if there's businesses in your local catchment area or those that, might be putting on teams or staff, approach them first and foremost. And to Tony's question from the UK, thank you, Tony, in terms of students coming into an organisation and perhaps working for 3 to 6 months. That seems like a long time without pay. But, if you're happy to work and show people your experience and your enthusiasm and how you do work, I think certainly that might be attractive to a business in hiring you, because I think students have got so much to offer. They've learnt the theory and everything else, but they do need that practical experience to help them get ahead as well. So my advice would be reach out to those organisations that businesses that and I think that's really innovative thinking about trying to get our students sort of engaged and across some of the sectors. So thank you for those questions. I hope that answers what you need. Happy to take more information from you offline if I could be of assistance to you guys.
Right. Now, again, this is perhaps even an earlier stage for people in their tourism studies, Karen, is from Stu. Do you think it is still responsible to encourage young people now to take degrees in tourism and travel, especially because governments have suddenly started telling people in the sector they need to look at new skills and industries, brackets, kiwi fruit picking, anyone? So I think we've got a clue where Stu might be from that. Even before this, it was difficult to convince young people this was an industry with a great future. How do we do it now?
Well, good question, Stu. And if you're kiwi picking, then you might know my nephew Ashton, who also does the same thing there in New Zealand. But look, I absolutely, I'm passionate. It's been my long-term career, like most of you on the call. I'm not going to say, that we should give it up as a career option, because I'm still of the belief, I'm the glass half full girl. I'm still of the belief that things will bounce back. It's just going to take a bit of time. And it just might be that we have to do things in a different way. So if you're going into that career, I think about the different career options within that path. But I do think that if you're doing a 3 or 4 year degree or more, that hopefully by then we will be coming out at the other end of where we're at now. Of course, it's different in every global location. Secondly, though, I think as an industry, Carolyn, we all have a role to play. And I know tourism talent in New Zealand, as an example, Jason and Dylan work very hard at, working in the training space to encourage people to get into the industry as a serious career option. And I certainly need to do in Australia more. I need to engage more with a lot of the educational institutions and so on to remind them of what an important sector tourism is. So I'm going to say glass half full. I want the glass to be filled up, and I do believe that it still should be a consideration as we go forward. It might be right now you have to supplement your income doing other things, but I still think that in the future we will surely see, aviation come back. I'm hopeful, and also hotels and other things open. Thanks.
Brilliant, thank you. Now, a question relating to the gig economy, Karen, from William, which is, how can you improve sales and attracting audiences and traffic using a gig economy format? How does it work? So I guess that's a little bit developing the point you made about bringing in talent to do some of those things using a gig economy. Anything to add on that, or that you can drill down a little bit further to help people think how that might work for them?
So in terms of actually them being aware of it, or can you elaborate on the question any or not?
That's literally what we have, which is to say, can you improve? So it literally is, can you improve sales and attracting audiences and traffic using a gig format? So I guess that might be a question about how do you engage people to do some of those things for you in terms of the gig economy. I mean, to me, that sounds like the virtual perfect use of it, but this is your area, not mine.
Yeah, no, that's good. Well, look, I think first and foremost, if our industry is adopting or does choose to adopt, which I can certainly say in New Zealand and here in Australia, I know since Tourism Talent launched the Gig Connect that there is some take up from really experienced people in that space. And therefore, I would suggest that, you know, when we talked earlier, we looked at you know, around 80% of our tourism businesses being SMEs, for example. And what has been a challenge, I think, for a lot of those businesses, a lot of smaller businesses are owner operated, and respectfully, they might not have the same skill set that other people may bring through the gig economy. So, for example, if you are a business that hasn't to this point had the ability to hire a, let's just say, digital marketing strategist, for example, on a big salary for the year, your business might be able to hire somebody as part of the gig economy who's got those digital strategic skills, who can help you set up your business, and yet for much in a much more cost-effective way. So it might mean that the money that you're paying up front for somebody with those high skills is certainly, you know, going to be providing much more, I guess, insights and everything to your business, which in turn will lead to, I think, higher sales, because you're going to have hopefully a higher level of people working in your business with you.
Okay.
Sorry, just on that, on the gig economy, how important is it, Karen, for you to get gigs that complement each other within the industry?
Well, I think that's an important question as well, Jed. I mean, we refer to the gig economy also as the on-demand economy, you know, so when people are looking for different skill sets. But I think that, you know, I'll take myself as an example. I mean, I think some things complement, but you'd be also, if I take destination marketing as an example, when I was doing some contract work for a destination marketer, I wasn't then obviously choosing another destination to market as well, because that could be seen as a conflict of interest. But I might pick different things. So at the moment, for example, in myself, I am doing some work in recruiting, I'm doing some work in training, and that covers all sorts of training, customer service, marketing, any areas that I've been working with over the time. And then I'm also sitting on boards, and then I'm also working for local government, helping them with their economic development strategies. So I think it's important to get things that are non-conflicting, so that your businesses that you're working for feel comfortable that they, you know, you're working on their specific sort of projects. And I'm always transparent about those things too, Jed, because I think we have to be. It's a small tourism family sometimes, you know, so
Absolutely.
I think transparency is key.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Oh, new questions coming in. I'm just going to duck in and see what they were.
Oh, there you go.
Carolyn.
Okay, is it possible to assist and support students on the gig economy across borders? i.e., are there opportunities for that students from India for work from home?
Look, I think, you know, depending on who it is or what the business is, once again, I think it's reaching out to your own networks and contacts and seeing what it is that you can help them with. And I think in this day and age at the moment, most people know, and depending on where you are in the world, you know, here, for example, in Australia, some of our restrictions are easing, but people are still working from home. And I myself know some students here who've been quite innovative in saying, look, to myself as a, you know, person who's been in the industry 30 years plus, there are younger students who will help me with things who work from home. So for example, computer technology and those things that I'm absolutely hopeless at, I have a young student that helps me with that type of thing. He works from home, he travels to my house and helps me with my computer work and so on. So, you know, there's different things that you can be doing for different people. So I think about the skill set that you currently have. And as a student, if you're a young student, I'm sure already that your digital skills are much greater than some people in my sort of age or generation set. And we need the young people to help us with that. So I think just think about who those people could be.
Is this kind of linked as well with the sort of the relatively growing trend of digital nomads, Karen? Whereby there are a group of people, okay, traditionally more being on the sort of the tech side of things, where so long as you've got a laptop and Wi-Fi, good Wi-Fi, you can work from anywhere for any company. So you could go to Bali, which I believe is great for digital nomads because the Wi-Fi is super fast and everything else. So you could work from Bali for an Australian company or a New Zealand company or a Thai company, whatever else. And geography is no barrier. And maybe, do you think that as a result of COVID-19, where we're all been forced to work remotely, that's just kind of heightened that a little bit more now, where companies actually can employ people from completely different geographies, and it can work really effectively for all parties.
Jed, couldn't agree more. And in fact, once I enhance my digital skills, that's the kind of job I'm looking for.
Me too, mate. Me too.
So, you see those ads sometimes come up on Facebook and the like saying, have a laptop, you can work from anywhere. So I definitely do think it is that. And I think that our younger people, our younger generation of today, they really have fantastic digital skills. And it's just about looking at those and saying, how can we adapt those to generating income? So I definitely do think it's heightened, Jed. I think that's very much the case in this day and age. Have Wi-Fi, have laptop, will travel. It's very much that.
Super. I can certainly say that I regularly work from locations all over the world and do my job. So I don't say I'm perfectly at the digital nomad stage yet, but very short term. Karen, I know you touched on the fact that in fact, Tourism Talent was originally a New Zealand company, wasn't it?
Correct.
We've
Still
got
is,
yes. We've got a question on how to get in touch with the New Zealand team from Guy in New Zealand.
Okay, well,
so
thank you, Guy.
To share the details.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'll just go back to the last slide. So thanks, Guy in New Zealand. If you'd like, our website is there. So if you'd like to click on the website, and you'll see all of ours up there for both New Zealand and Australia. And we look forward to hearing from you. We're also on LinkedIn and Facebook, of course, so you can contact us via those means as well. And we'd love to hear from you. So thanks, Guy, for your interest.
So there you have it. Huge thanks again to Karen Priest for sharing her insights in the audience Q&A with us this week. And if you haven't already done so, please do have a listen to the keynote from this session, which you'll find in the previous episode, also out now. It's my honour of being the next keynote speaker on Tuesday's session at 700 hours UK time in the morning, very early, and I'll be discussing the big opportunity we have right now for the global tourism industry. I do hope you can join us for it, and please do feel free to send in any questions for after the session as well. That's all for now. Enjoy your day, stay safe, stay healthy, stay home, and please don't forget to share our content with your friends and industry colleagues who may also believe that now, more than ever, travel is better without the crowds.